Good day everyone, it's Gayatri Devi and welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy this content and would like to see more of it, please do give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and also give me your comments and your feedback. So as I start to speak about some of these topics, I'm not sure sometimes how that's going to land and if it's confusing because a lot of it is subtle and based on my experience. So let me know how you receive it, if you have other questions or other topics that you'd like addressed, and hopefully this content can be helpful to you in allowing you to live a very joyful and peaceful life. Today I would like to talk about the difference between humility and arrogance. And these are it's very advanced and very subtle energetics that I've learned and I'm still practicing and refining from my teacher, Mayan shaman Peace Mother Gita Sacred Song. But I'll do my best to attempt to describe the difference so that you can discern it in yourself and others and attempt to cultivate the humility and not the arrogance. So here are the differences between humility and arrogance. How do you know if you're truly humble or if someone's cultivating humility? First is that humility is a virtue. It's something that's genuine and it's based in love. I met a person a few weeks ago and he was telling me about himself and he's like, oh, well, I just kind of do this and do that. And he was trying to be humble, but he was actually putting himself down. And so that's false humility. That's not actually being a true humble instrument because he's locking down his own power. And I felt like he actually wasn't honoring all the greatness he had inside. Because what he was telling me about was like fantastic. And he actually was investing in real estate and had all these properties, and I'm like, that's amazing. But he was kind of like not giving himself the full credit for it. So if you want to be humble, you can also give yourself credit for the beautiful things about you. And there's nothing wrong with that because it comes from a higher source. And if you have worked on yourself, if you have done your homework, if you're striving to be a better person, you can acknowledge yourself for that, and that's love. That's cultivating humility. There's no shame in that. You don't have to put yourself down to fit in a box or to be a small thing. In fact, my teacher, Peace Mother, will say, like, God wants us to be great. She might not use those words, but Spirit wants us to be great. Spirit wants us to acknowledge that we are powerful, light and love-filled beings. So if we are to be healing instruments, know that it's okay to, again, stand up and acknowledge yourself for what you've gone through, for the times that you've done the right thing, for the suffering you've experienced, but yet you're still here, for the challenges that have come your way, but yet you've overcome them, all of that. And that's actually cultivating humility because you're allowing that life to circulate through you. And again, it's something genuine. It's not a false contraction or constriction on your soul or on your energetic field. Second, there's no attachment or expectation when you're humble. If you're making a humble action like stepping aside for someone or giving, maybe you're compromising in a certain way, there shouldn't be within yourself that little arrogance, let's say, or the kind of taking or the clinching or the clasping. Humility is something that is free and unattached, and there should be no expectation. So I would imagine that a saint like Mother Teresa, if I heard of a story where she gave up her meal on a flight so that other people could have the meal, and then everyone else followed her example. I don't feel that inside she was saying, well, I'll do this so people think I'm great. She did it with no expectation, just for herself and out of the love and compassion for others. And so you can check kind of within yourself, sense in your heart center, or see how you feel. But are there little thoughts kind of within your mind like, oh, well, if I do this, someone's going to think I'm great. Like if I donate, well, look what recognition I'll get. Or, well, I'm going to compromise because I'm doing the right thing. Like if you're having those kind of thoughts or attachments to it, then there's a bit of arrogance there. It's actually not true humility. Third is that the goal with humility is to align with the Dharma. So the Dharma is like the goodness, the righteousness of the universe. So again, if you're trying to align and do things for the right reason, that's humility, and that's not arrogance. But you have to be careful of, again, self-talk. So if you start justifying, well, I do all this right, or you might know people like this, well, I always do this and this and this and this, and you start keeping track of it, again, you're making it small instead of something big, and you're creating that attachment and expectation, and it's feeding your ego instead of being something that's kind of offered up to, again, the Dharma, just for the sake of doing the right thing. I already mentioned this, but it should be selfless. So again, something that you're doing for that goodness. Like when people volunteer and they're just doing it because they want to give. That's part of our natural composition. Like our inner light wants to give. We want to serve. We're all here to serve each other in one way or another. Just by existing. We don't live in a bubble or a vacuum. So in order to eat and sleep and talk and interact, we rely on each other as a collective organism. So there isn't that, we can't survive individually. And so there is that collective awareness. There's that selflessness, that selfless awareness that when I do something for someone else, they can pass it on to others. And I'm also constantly, all of us are receiving so much from others, like who grows the food, who makes the things that come into our doorstep, who carries the mail. Like all of these things that we can experience in our life are facilitated by the hard work and sacrifice of other people. And lastly, another way to remain humble about things is if someone praises you or says a great job, if my teacher, Peace Mother Gita Sacred Song, said this, is a way you can kind of keep yourself clean and energetically clean is to offer it up to a higher power or being. So you could say, thank you, that's really kind of you to say. I do it through the grace of God or through the grace of Spirit or through my spirit guides. And by doing that, you're not taking things for your little self, you're offering it up. And I remember that. It was just a wonderful way to, and that's what she does. That's part of her practice, always offering things up to, again, her spirit guides, her gurus, the teachers and energies that channel through her so that it doesn't feed the ego that wants to say, well, look, I'm a healer, I do this, I do that. And then it feeds that little voice, which we don't want to feed. We want to feed the big one. All right. I hope this was helpful on the humility side, understanding what that is. It's okay to love yourself, to praise yourself, to be thankful for all the goodness that you have, and also attribute it to the higher power, the Dharma, the goodness, and just continue to let that channel through you and open yourself up more and more to the light. And I mention this a lot in my videos, is that the more you do that, the more each of us does that individually, we are healing ourselves, we're healing the planet, we're healing society, we're healing consciousness, we're affecting all those people who are relating to us in some way. Even if they hear our voice, even if they see us, even if they, like a relative that just knows that we exist through the energy field, as we change, we're emanating that vibration to them and allowing them to also receive that higher vibration. So it's very, even though these are subtle, small things, one might say, they are very big and very powerful. So now on to the arrogance side. How do you know? How do you know if someone's being arrogant? Well, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but with arrogance, and I've had the experience of meeting people like this, and I've learned what's very interesting is, I didn't realize this when I was younger, but some people go through life because they want to do things. They have it within themselves. They have enough spiritual maturity, or they somehow know that when you do the right thing, it comes back to you, and they'll do things just because that's the right thing to do. Other people do what's the right thing, but their motivations are because they know that it will get them further. Or, for example, if they were just terrible, if they behaved horribly, like if they really followed their own selfish motivations in their job, for example, and they said everything they really thought, they would get fired, or they would lose their job, or people would never want to work with them again. And so they behave, they take on these, they take on like a good guy role, or they'll act in a certain way or say certain things when it benefits them. And so if you don't know them very well, you might say, oh, look, they're such a good person. But they're really actually doing it for very selfish reasons, and they can carry a ton of arrogance. And so it's no surprise to me when I see also the articles about these like politicians and people who are just horrible, because I think no one's watching that. They just look at, oh, look at the results you did in your work, but they don't look at how they treat people. People aren't monitoring their motivations. They're just looking at so-called results and thinking that's an indication of someone's ability to, for example, be a leader, and not really their makeup. Are they really a good person, or are they just saying these things in order to gain power or to gain access, or because they think they're better than the person? And so it's selfishly motivated. It's arrogance. So again, arrogance is seeking a reward. They're seeking to feed their ego. They're not doing it for selfless reasons. They're doing it for selfish reasons to, again, gain something. So they may be, I'm not thinking of an example right now, but maybe I'll lend you some money so that you become dependent on me. Or I'll be agreeable right now because tomorrow I want you to vote for me, or support my opinion in that, as an example. So that's not humility. That's not someone who's genuinely interested in being a good person. Now, secondly, so arrogance is, so think about, another way to think about this is that, so virtues and the light is oneness, right? It's love, it's connection, it's working together, like holistic. Arrogance and things that are dark strive to separate, to detract, to divide and conquer, right? So arrogance is something that creates division within a person and then within their relationships. So they're seeking something for them, their own like little self-interest. Maybe it's, I'm going to protect my family, so I'm not going to do something for you. Or my company is going to take this land and not give it to someone else. Like it creates these barriers, again, like one or the other, instead of working together. So with arrogance too, there's a higher, the person is, when they behave with arrogance, there's a higher and lower division that they're creating within themselves. let's say, I'll use an example. Let's say a family member has cancer, and a relative decides to bring them food, which is great, and they should. I recommend it to everyone. But that person, the relative that's bringing food, they are doing it, and then they're saying, well, look at what I'm doing. I'm doing such a good thing. Isn't that good for me? And maybe they're doing it so that they can tell their friends and family how much they're doing for that person. And maybe they could be doing more, and maybe they want to do it again to look good to other people. So although they're doing a good thing, and on the spiritual level, yes, they are doing the good thing, and so they get the credit for doing what is helpful to someone else. But their soul is also registering that it's not a completely pure intention. There's arrogance there. They're puffing up their world, their idea of who they are and how good they are, and those types of things, instead of just doing it selflessly and saying and being there 100% for the person. So someone who has a greater amount of humility in themselves and less arrogance might not say, well, I'll give you this, one little thing, and then I'll talk about it to everyone else. But they might come up to that same cancer patient and just say, what can I do for you? What can you need? Is it here? Is it there? And they're just right there. And I'm speaking also from experience, but there's just a difference, and then you can tell